Good day, I'm Rick, Man of History, and your guide to the past. And today we're going to be exploring a myth, exploring historical fact, something that everybody knows is true, and that is that people in the past didn't drink water. So, let's cut to the chase. Did people in the past drink water? Yes, they did. Take care. Now, you might want to ask, how do we know that people drank water? Am I not just claiming some sort of expertise? Well, I mean, I am, but also there's various reasons we can look at. Firstly, it's in the historical record. Gregory of Tours, for example, in the 6th century wrote that when one man arrived at a village by the road, he went into a small habitation and asked there for water. Gregory also mentions a pond that is still water as being a source of drink. He wrote that in the middle of the village is a large pond with water that is very agreeable to drink. Paulus Agentia, I mean, please do excuse my pronunciation, in the 7th century wrote, "Of all things, water is of most use in every mode of regimen. It is necessary to know that the best water is devoid of quality as regards taste and smell, is most pleasant to drink, and pure to the sight. And when it passes through the Precordia quickly, one cannot find a better drink." So in the 6th and 7th century, people were writing that water is safe to drink and is good to drink. The water, of course, was fairly free. So in most towns, most villages, castles, fortifications, there's a source of water. They're often built on rivers. Now, rivers are a great line of communication. They're a great way of getting your goods from one place to another, for getting yourself from one place to another, until the 18th century roads in Britain. Well, I mean, once the Romans left, the upkeep of roads became not really a thing, and the creation of new roads became, well, not a thing at all. So rivers were a really important means of transportation. They were full of fish, or often full of fish, and salmon was a common delicacy, but it was a fish for the poor because you could just go to the river and pull it out. But it was not just an important raw material for trade and for crafting, important for growing your crops and for watering your animals. It was important for people, and it was free. Beer, which we all know was what everybody drank all the time, everybody was drinking gallons and gallons of beer. Well, it was drunk, and mostly it was small beer, so relatively weak but full of nutrition. But you either had to brew it or you had to buy it, and regardless you had to pay taxes on it, so it cost money. So it exists in the historical record. It's in Chaucer, it's in all kinds of sort of popular culture of the time, and also survived to today. It's in lots of documentary evidence. Water was generally pretty free, and thus generally doesn't appear, or not as much. But I've already mentioned a couple of people who've written about it. It's also worth remembering that these towns, particularly the big towns, didn't just have wells and later pumps, but also it made it an important sort of focal point of civic life. The well, the area, the water feature, the fountain. But also consider things like the system of aqueducts in Rome, that right from classical times, which brought clean, fresh drinking water into the town, and that this wasn't unique to Rome. For example, in the 13th century, the city of London constructed the conduit, which sounds like something from science fiction, but is actually a system of lead pipes that brought fresh water from a spring outside the city walls into the middle of London, where people could freely access it. So there was clean water piped from outside the town into the centre of London in the 13th century, in the 1200s. Towns moved their polluting trades, such as tannery, outside of the city walls, outside of the town proper, so that these industries which would pollute the water did it outside of the town, didn't pollute the town's drinking water. Most people understood that sort of water that didn't move was often unclean, was often unsafe to drink. But most moving water, rivers, streams, was if not completely safe to drink, relatively safe to drink in this period of the past that I'm talking about, the medieval period, the early modern period, the period before the Industrial Revolution, before intensive industrial activity, which does make a huge difference. And you will get areas where the water is less safe and water is needs to be boiled. But there is this understanding again from Paulus in the 7th century, who wrote of the difference between good, clean, pure water and bad, tainted water, water that would make you sick. He wrote, waters which contain impurities, have a fetid smell, or any bad quality, may be so improved by boiling as to be fit to be drunk, or by mixing with wine, adding the astringent to that which is sweeter, and the other to the astringent. Some kinds of water may be expedient to strain, such as the marshy, saltish, and bituminous water. So there's an understanding from ancient times, from the teachings of Galen and Hippocrates, right through the medieval, early modern period, modernity, that water needed to be treated if it was unsafe. The Abbot of Fiers, Lupus, Servatus, and again, please do excuse my pronunciation. I have friends from France that I hope never see this video because they will loathe that my failed mangling of their language. But the Abbot Lupus wrote in the 9th century, let us make use of a healthy natural drink which will sometimes be a benefit to both body and soul, if it is drawn not from a muddy cistern but from a clear well or the current of a transparent brook. So there was understanding of good water, bad water, and water was generally free and generally widely drunk. And just as a very final last point, consider holy people. So the idea that drinking just water was a sign of spiritual purity in Western Europe, that monks who perhaps had not been following the rule of St. Benedict or the rule of their monastery as well as they should be, might be restricted to a diet of bread and water, which means that the water that they drank must have been not unhealthy. This was a spiritual punishment, or a physical punishment for spiritual misdeeds, not an attempt to poison a sinner. Finally, very, very finally, people would visit pilgrimages. They'd go on pilgrimages to shrines, and they would visit holy wells to get water which was blessed by saints, or which was thought to have curative properties, which they would then put into little ampulla, little holy water jars, and I should have brought one out with me, and those were used as medicine. And if water was thought to be poisonous, it couldn't also be medicine, surely. So there you have it. Water was widely drunk in the medieval and early modern period, from the Romans right through to today. It wasn't all beer, but I think most of us can agree that a bit of beer now and again does nobody any harm.